Welcome back to the Indicator 13 Compliance Module series. Next, we're going to be covering measurable post-secondary goals. As a reminder, if you have not already done so, please pause and take the pretest. Remember, you'll need your PPID number in order to complete the survey. The purpose of this series is to enhance the practices for writing compliant, transition-based IEPs and to broaden the foundation for effective practices related to Indicator 13 of the State Performance Plan. This slide shows you how the different indicators of the compliance monitoring file review topics related to transition will be covered across the different modules. For the purposes of this module, Module 3, we will be reviewing post-secondary goals for education and training, employment, and independent living. Specific compliance language file review question 290 states, is there an appropriate measurable post-secondary goal or goals that covers education or training, employment, and as needed, independent living? That will be the focus of what we're discussing as we move forward today.
So as we're looking at that, many times people have a confusion between post-secondary goals and measurable annual goals. Here's a slide that shows you the difference between the two. Post-secondary goals, of course, are updated annually at each IEP review, but may be reviewed more often than that. They are consistently based on assessment data. They're individualized for each student and should include that student's name and their future goals. But it does not require progress monitoring. What it should do is address what type of work does a student want to do after high school? What further education do I need to do this type of work? For example, do I need college or training programs or something else that might support me? And where do I want to live after high school? As compared to a measurable annual goal, which again is updated annually and based on assessment data, is individualized, but it's written to include a condition, again, the student's name, clearly defined behavior, and performance criteria. These goals do require progress monitoring and should be there to help us address skill deficits which lead to success in post-secondary goals. In documenting success for post-secondary goals, IEP teams must address each post-secondary goal area and document that in the IEP. So we should see goals for education and training, employment, and as needed independent living. These should be seen in two places in the IEP. We should be reading information about this in the present ed levels under the post-secondary transition bullet, as well as in the transition grid. If a post-secondary goal area is not selected for a student, then these present education levels must use data to document why the team has determined not to include that goal. And a statement such as, the IEP team has documented that a goal and services for this area is not needed at this time. Never write NA, none, or leave the goal area blank. Here's some examples of possible post-secondary goals. Jesse has a goal of working in the travel industry. Steve has a plan to seek competitive employment, possibly in the trucking industry. Andre has a plan to seek employment in video production after graduation from college. Cindy has a goal of supported employment, possibly in the area of food service. Lee has a goal to enlist in the Army after high school. Mark's goal is to work with computers after graduation. Note that each of these are written in a measurable fashion. We would be able to see Jesse's goal or Steve's plan. Independent living goals should be included for students who are anticipated to need services. For example, Caroline's goal would be to live independently. Zach's goal is to live with his family, but he'll need support to access community resources. Jill's goal is to live in a supported apartment and to access community resources and programs with supports. Now, there may be some students for whom you do not anticipate the need for services based on the data that you've shared in the present ed level. So that means based on assessment that was given for particular students at particular times. Jeff's goal is to live on his own once he has established employment. Based on data, the IEP team has determined that a goal and services for independent living are not needed at this time. Here's some red flags you should watch out for when considering whether a student may need an independent living goal or services for independent living. Are there behavior and discipline challenges? Is there need for communication beyond the high school setting? Are there difficulties managing assignments or materials? Or difficulty managing time and money? Difficulty managing healthcare needs? Is the student experiencing teen parenthood or pregnancy? Is the student involved in children and youth protective services? Is there substance abuse or mental health needs? And does the student maybe have needs under the area of self-determination, monitoring, and self-advocacy? Here are things to remember for all post-secondary goals. All post-secondary goals must be addressed, all three areas: education and training, employment, and independent living. They should be based on interests, abilities, and preferences that have been determined through assessment. Each of these goals must be updated annually. And keep in mind that these goals should be reflective of what a student will do after they graduate from high school.
Great. So now that we've had a fantastic conversation about our measurable goals, we're going to shift over briefly to our question and answer discussion. To start our discussion off, the first question is, what do you do when a student has no idea what they want to do after high school?
Great question. This is where varied transition assessments that are updated annually, as well as opportunities for career exploration, are a critical component because they help the student refine those plans for life after school. Students should be included in those conversations and have access to experiences also being provided in the general education setting through the comprehensive school counseling plan and the career readiness indicator under the Every Student Succeeds Act in order to help those refinements happen.
And what steps can we take to educate parents and young people about receiving benefits, but concurrently working at the same time?
Well, the Pennsylvania Community of Practice on Secondary Transition has worked very hard to create support materials to help youth and families become better informed and better understand that working, even while collecting benefits, is always the best option. The Community of Practice has created a benefits planning toolkit that is available on the Pennsylvania Secondary Transition, PASecondarytransition.com website, and the patent.com website. We encourage you to go there and take a look at those.
And what strategies can we use when students may have unrealistic or potentially unattainable goals?
Again, I can't stress the importance of updated transition assessments and data from career exploration opportunities as being the best tools to demonstrate how a career goal might be unrealistic. Also, through the transition exploration process, students should be made aware of the different requirements to enter into professions, including the education requirements, physical requirements of a job, exam requirements, time commitments, etc. Which is why it's so important for the IEP team to reconvene as that data is being collected. For example, if goals are unattainable, the IEP would need to be revised to reflect any changes that are needed, either to A, make the goal attainable, or B, revise that goal.
Would you say that these strategies also apply to working with parents who may have unrealistic or unattainable goals?
I think that's true, Matt. Data is really the best way to help everyone on the team get a better picture of what may be attainable following graduation. Transition assessment should help shape what a realistic goal looks like. Having those ongoing conversations with family members about interest and preference and aptitude, where everyone has an equal voice, will help create an environment where a team led by the youth can come to a conclusion that's a good fit.
Can you give us some examples of additional skills needed for independent living beyond self-care, household chores, etc.? And how would you incorporate those into the transition plan?
Sure. Some of the other examples could include things like making appointments for medical appointments or scheduling hair appointments. Also accessing transportation, understanding how elapsed time helps you figure out when a bus might be coming. And following recommendations for medication administration, knowing when to call in your refill on a prescription, knowing how and what time you should be taking that medication, maintaining a budget, making sure you have enough money to pay your bills and have money to purchase food, and how to really follow your budget to do that. And those can all be incorporated into different activities in classrooms in which the students are participating. For example, budgeting can be part of a math class that a student is following, as well as accessing transportation. I mentioned elapsed time. So those are things that should be incorporated into the classroom education, but can also be helping develop those skills for transition.
Great, and just shifting gears a little bit from independent living to post-secondary education. If a student, let's say, for example, has been accepted to an engineering program at Penn State, is it okay to put the name of both the program and the school into the student's post-secondary goal?
Sure, that's okay to do that. It's fine, especially if there's a plan in place. You want to be as specific as possible if you can, but remember that these post-secondary goals are just statements of where a student expects to be. And there are certainly, we anticipate that there'll be changes as well. Things may happen along the way. That student may decide that they no longer want to enter an engineering program. They can change direction, but the IEP team should still plan to build the skills needed for that particular stated goal.
Great, thank you.
And now, as we conclude, we want to remind you that you can certainly reach out to the IU transition consultant at your local IU for additional support, as well as a transition patent consultant. To get that information, you could go to patent.net and find the secondary transition directory, where you'll be able to locate your local IU transition consultant and a patent consultant. And finally, we want to remind you, take the post test. You'll need your PPID number in order to take and complete the survey. Thanks for joining us.